is and should be a touchdown. Here we go. Bryson Mars has got his back behind him. It is Jaquindon Jackson. Here's the snap. Bryson Barnes looking deep. He's got a man. It's caught! He's gone! Touchdown early! All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to College Football Wraparound. This first time since the Alabama-Georgia game that we have been live here on the channel. So, of course, we are so glad to be here with you here tonight. And so, we've got a great show in store for you. And so, we are going to talk about many upsets that we saw over the course of Saturday. So, of course, that includes Alabama and Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Arkansas, Texas A&M, which, I mean, technically not an upset against Missouri. And then you got USC and Minnesota. We will be getting to that. Of course, rankings at the end of the show. Also, another programming note. We will not have, for the second straight week, no game broadcast. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we won't be doing any kind of game broadcast this week. So that's something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and dive into this. And we start out by talking about Alabama and Vanderbilt. Now, let me start off by saying this. Okay? When you play a team like Vanderbilt, a team that you were a heavy favorite to win against, it comes as a shock that you lose. Adding the factor that it's Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt has never really been that good at football. They had never beaten a AP number 1 ranked team. Ever. This right here is, for a lot of people, considered the most embarrassing loss in Alabama football history. And this is also considered probably the greatest win in Vanderbilt football history. I mean, that's kind of what this is being played up to be. Now, the quarterback, Diego Pavia, he is getting a lot of comparisons to Johnny Manziel. And rightfully so. I mean, he won the game. And, I mean, he's been able to go out and talk trash before and after beating Alabama. So, I mean, what do I see from this? First off, I saw an Alabama team that, quite frankly, just didn't seem like they thought about the fact that, we need to go out there and actually win. They looked like a team that looked like, we've already won this game. Why show up? You know, they overlooked this game. They overlooked the Vanderbilt team, which I'm going to be completely honest with you. Okay. Yes. Vanderbilt they were on a 2-game losing streak. They, quite frankly, their losses are not great. But go look at their wins. Got to win against Virginia Tech at home. They got to win against Alabama now. I mean, I got to say this. Okay? Vanderbilt is not a team that you need to sleep on. Now, for that matter, what this proves, and I hope that these people realize this. This proves ever more that playing in the SEC, you have to show up every single week. Okay? And the same can be said for the Big Ten, because we're going to get into that here a little bit later in the show. But you've got to show up on Saturday and actually play the football game. You can't overlook anybody you're playing. And Alabama just got a taste of that for years. And I'm going to be honest with you. For years, Alabama has been able to overlook some of these opponents and somehow still beat them. Well, that didn't happen. That did not happen Saturday. Trust me, it didn't happen. Alabama, their defense did not show up. They played a Vanderbilt team who put up 40 points against Alabama. Okay? Alabama could not stop Vanderbilt at all during this ball game. It was evident. Okay? Another thing that Alabama needs to work on, how in the world, okay, how does the coaches on special teams put two players with the same number out in the field to get a penalty? How does that happen? You can't do that. It's stuff like that Alabama, it's not a shocker they lost this ball game. Now, the fact of the matter is they still had a chance to win this game at the end, but their defense, of course, didn't show up on the last drive. You had Malachi Moore, who decided that he was going to go throw a temper tantrum. So if you're Alabama, this is a terrible reflection on a team that was ranked number 1 in the AP, and you lose to Vanderbilt after coming off of a win against Georgia. And let's be honest about this. Alabama, the last 6 quarters of football they've played, their defense has not shown up. So, for all those Alabama fans out there, I know you're sitting here saying, because I'm going to be honest. I live in the state of Alabama. I know what's going on. Okay? People in Alabama are fed up with the way the defense is playing. You got to play better. And if you're Kalen DeBoer, this is your wake-up call, okay? Because let's be honest. You're in the state of Alabama. You're coaching the University of Alabama's football program, which has had Nick Saban as its head coach before you. All Alabama knows is to win. And let's be honest, if Alabama loses a couple more games, then in all respects, Kalen DeBoer could be on the hot seat if it's like a 9-3 season. That is how Alabama fans view this, okay? Alabama fans don't put up with losing. And that's the thing that you could, if you're at Washington, if you go 9-3, oh, you're doing great. But here at Alabama, that doesn't cut it. You're looking at playing for national championships. So, let's just dive into the stats here for a minute. So total yards, Vanderbilt, 418, 94. So, okay, before I say anything else, offensively for Alabama, it wasn't bad. Alabama's offense is the same Alabama offense that we've seen all season, and it's been pretty good. You look at total yards, of course, Alabama put 394. Passing yards, Alabama 310, Vanderbilt 252. Rushing yards, Vanderbilt 166, Alabama 84. And then yards per play, Alabama 8.8, and then Vanderbilt 5.6. And you look at the first downs, Vanderbilt 26, Alabama 17. Third down efficiency, Alabama 3 of 7, Vanderbilt 12 of 18. Fourth down efficiency, both teams 1 of 1. So here's the glaring thing here too. Vanderbilt they ran 75 plays on offense to 45 of Alabama. Okay. Vanderbilt punted 2 times, same as Alabama. Alabama had 6 penalties for 57 yards. Vanderbilt 3 for 20. Alabama had a fumble and an interception. Vanderbilt had the ball 42 minutes and 8 seconds to 17 minutes and 52 seconds of Alabama. So that's just team stats. You look at some of the player stats, I mean, it's not bad, but if we're going to be honest about the way that these two teams played, at the end of the day, Alabama's defense could not get off the field, and And then when you look at it, Vanderbilt just took advantage of it. Vanderbilt's offense, I mean, you got to give them credit. They played a good job. They did a good job against Alabama, and Alabama and Vanderbilt won the game. It's as simple as that. And I think, and going back to it, if you look at this, like I said, for Kalen DeBoer, you hadn't lost yet. But now that you've lost, now you see the ugly side. So we'll see what Alabama does, and you'll see where I have them in the rankings. I still think Alabama is one of, I mean, when you look at talent-wise, they've got probably the best team in college football with the talent. But it all comes down to what is your attitude going into a football game. Okay? So that's all I got to say about that. So let's move on to another upset. The Arkansas Razorbacks. I mean, under Sam Pittman, this is his biggest win at Arkansas. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with it. Arkansas takes down Tennessee 19-14. Now, late in the third quarter of this game, it was 14-3 Tennessee. What is going to go down as one of the craziest ball games and endings of the season, probably. You look at team stats, Arkansas 434 to 332 at Tennessee. Passing yards, Arkansas 297 to 156 at Tennessee. Rush yards, Tennessee 176 to Arkansas 137. And then, so overall, it's a very clean game. I mean, no turnovers by either team. Time possession for Arkansas was big. They held the ball a lot longer. They did have a bunch of drives in the first half where they drove down the field and then they just couldn't. But Tennessee, I believe it was like at the end of the game, it's like a fourth down play, and Nico Maliava, he's got a chance to make a play, and he gets shoved out of bounds to end the ball game. It's like, what in the world? Arkansas, I'll say this. They deserved to win the ball game, and they did. They beat a Tennessee team at home, and I'll tell you this. Arkansas played a good ball game. Taylor Green, their quarterback, got hurt. So it was the backup Malachi Singleton who came in. They scored Arkansas scored a touchdown. I can't remember. I think it was like 30-something seconds left in the ball game, I think. I'm not 100% sure with you. But you look at the stats. I mean, Taylor Green, 19 to 27, 266. And then you look at Malachi Singleton, 2 3, 31 yards. And then as far as the rushing stats, I mean, Jaquindon Jackson, 20 carries, 57 yards on the touchdown. Malachi Singleton, 4 carries, 15 yards, 1 touchdown. So, I mean, not a lot to say there. Tennessee, Nico Maliapa, 16 to 28, 156. They did pretty good. And then Dylan Sampson, the running back, 22 carries, 140, 2 touchdowns for them. So, I mean, low-scoring football game. Arkansas had the ball longer, and Arkansas got the win. I mean, they deserved to win the ball game, and that's what they did. So, I don't know what else to say. But now Tennessee's got a lot they got to work on. But now that I've talked about Alabama and Tennessee, got to tell you, in a couple weeks when these two play, and it's going to be back in Rocky Top where Tennessee won 2 years ago, that's a ball game you want to circle on your calendar because that's going to be a fun one for sure. So let's turn our attention now. Missouri and Texas A&M. Now, I watched this one as well. It was boring because Texas A&M, and okay, when a good team does a good job, at the end of the game, it's kind of boring because the score is out of hand and you know who's won the ball game. Well, Texas A&M did a good job Saturday. They won 41-10 against Missouri, and I got to say this, their defense, They gave trouble to Brady Cook in that first half. And then, Luther Burden didn't do much. And then Missouri also shot themselves in the foot a lot. A lot of penalties that they had a chance. There was one play, I believe, it was like a long touchdown throw from Brady Cook to, I think it was like Luther Burden, got called back because I think it was like a legal man downfield. So I'll say this. Missouri shot themselves in the foot, but then Texas A&M's defense, I liked what they did. I also liked Connor Wigman came back, and I thought he played impressive. 18 of 22, 276. He had a great game. But the big star of this ball game was Le'Veon Moss. 12 carries, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. So, it was a masterclass from that run game of Texas A&M. The defense, I thought, played good. And then Connor Wigman, I thought, played good. So, there is a lot of positives come out of this ball game. And I guess the one thing we're getting close to halfway through the season. Some teams are already halfway through their season. Some are almost there, kind of. So, we're at this point where we're starting to see a little bit of that separation of who could be the 12 teams in the playoff, but there's still a lot of season left. Texas A&M, I would say this. And I'm not saying Missouri's not in this race either, because let's be honest, Missouri is still clearly in this, and I think, and I'm gonna say this, I think the 25 teams I have ranked are still have a chance to make the playoff. I don't think anybody's gonna disagree with that. But right now, Texas A&M, if they, I'll say this: if they didn't run into who it was, I thought it played a good defensive football game of Notre Dame that night. Who knows? They could be undefeated, and they really could be very high in the rankings right now. And A&M is that team that you kind of want to watch for. They looked good Saturday. They looked really good against a Missouri team that I think a lot of us thought they were going to be really good this season. And I don't know, and I'm not saying Missouri's not a playoff bound team, because they, like I said, they still could make it. But I don't think they're as good as what we thought they were. So take that for what it is. But Texas A&M, they took care of business, 41-10 against Missouri. Interesting ball game, but kind of boring near the end of the ball game, just to be honest with you. And finally, let's talk about Minnesota taking down USC. Now, big thing here for USC. You got to clean up the penalties. You got to have more discipline. And, their defense, it's better than last year. So, Minnesota wins 24-17. You look at total yards. USC, they outgained Minnesota 373 to 362. You look at the passing yards, USC 200 to 169 to Minnesota. Minnesota outran USC 193 to 173. First downs pretty even. Minnesota 23, USC 22. Third down efficiencies, USC 7-11. Minnesota 2 of 8. Fourth down efficiency. USC never went for it. Minnesota 2 of 2. Total plays, USC 66 to 59 of Minnesota. And then you look at the penalties. Again, USC 8 penalties, 59 yards. That's not going to cut it. But it was 2 interceptions by Miller Moss, and you have a fumble from USC. Minnesota fumbled it once. Now, USC did hold the ball longer than Minnesota, but at the end of the day, you can't turn the ball over a lot. And you have 3 turnovers to 1 turnover of Minnesota, you're not going to win. And then Minnesota actually scored a touchdown with like 8 seconds to go. And so I think it was like Max Brosmer, the quarterback, ran it in for Minnesota. So USC, second loss of the season. I still think they're a very interesting football team that you're going to want to watch. But right now they're not in my rankings. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Because I mean, they got the win over LSU, but what else have they done? I mean, they had to just go rampant against Wisconsin in the second half just to come back and win that ball game. So I mean, hey, you got a lot of work, I think, if you're USC, but definitely interesting ball game. Minnesota got the win, and you got to give credit where credit's due because they went on. I believe they said they went on bye week and or their previous game they played against Minnesota. They had the loss, and PJ Fleck told the fans, "Hey, look, don't give up on us yet because we got a lot of season left." And hey, I mean, get a win against USC. It's a good way to come back after the loss against Iowa. So very interesting. All right, folks. Here is the moment you've been waiting for, and that is what did my rankings look like? And I know that I'm probably going to have some comments coming in after this because, I mean, it's my rankings, and this is what I love doing. I mean, this is where I believe the team kind of should be right now. So without a doubt, let's go to the rankings. All right, folks. So here are my rankings. At number 1, I've got Texas. Right now, I think that win against Michigan is big. Even though I don't have Michigan ranked, Michigan is still a very interesting win for Texas. They went on the road, won that ball game. Plus, I just don't think there's any other team that would be better than Texas right now. So Texas is my number 1. Ohio State, very close, if I shall say. But they haven't really played anybody yet. This Saturday, though, they got number 3 Oregon, which these two, this is going to determine, which, I mean, I could be honest. If Texas doesn't look good against Oklahoma, but if Texas still wins, I would say this. The winner of Ohio State and Oregon could potentially move up to number 1. Now, you look at 4 and 5. I've got Miami at 4 over 5 Penn State. Here's my reasoning. Right now, and I just went off the metric of if they were to play today, who do I think is going to win? I would pick Miami to win that game because I think Miami, if it comes down to it, I think Miami would beat Penn State. So that's just the simplicity of that. Then you got at 6, you got Alabama. Now, I know. You're like, wow, Cooper, you only moved Alabama down to 6. Why are they not further? Well, let me be honest with you, okay? Yes, the loss against Vanderbilt was bad. Like, really bad for Alabama. But the thing is, they got the win against Georgia. In my mind, right now, I think Alabama, if they play the way they did against Georgia in the first half, they are the best team in the country. But these last 6 quarters have not been it for Alabama. So, I'm still taking it. I'm still putting Alabama at number 6. I think they're good enough. They're still going to be in that race to be in the playoff. But they just have to fix things on defense, special teams, and then clean up the penalties. And I think Alabama's going to be fine. At number 7, I got Georgia. I mean, not really. I mean, I'll say this. Georgia, I thought going to the Alabama game, they were the number 1 team. Alabama beat them. I still think Georgia's a good football team. They got to find that X factor on the offense. I mean, there's no Ladd McConkey. There's no Brock Bowers. So who's that guy? Who's the guy for Carson Beck? Who is the guy that's going to show up and show out? So, I mean, we'll see. But I still think they're better than Tennessee. Tennessee, I still think, has a lot to prove. Now, yes, they got the win against Oklahoma. But still, that game against Alabama at the end of the month, that's going to be big because I think that game's going to prove to us what is Tennessee and what is Alabama. So we'll see. And then you see at number 9, which I got to be honest. I didn't think I was going to do this, but hey, I've liked watching Clemson. I think they are a good football team. And I'll say this. Yes, I was wrong. Okay. I know my viewers out there are probably thinking, oh, he's kind of flip flopped on Clemson. Well, it's not that I flip flopped, it's that I've come to a realization I was wrong. And so Clemson at number 9, I think, is a good spot for them. Number 10, Notre Dame. I mean, they just keep winning. They got the win against Texas A&M, and I don't know what else to do but put Notre Dame at number 10. At 11, you got Texas A&M. They got the win against Missouri. I really liked what I saw from Texas A&M, so I put them at number 11. At number 12, I got LSU. I think they're good, but there's still something missing down there in Baton Rouge. So we'll just wait and see what they can fix. Got a big one coming up against number 13, Ole Miss, which Ole Miss, they haven't beat anybody, and they lost to Kentucky at home. So there's a lot to be desired if you're Ole Miss, but you got a big game against LSU. We'll see what you can do. At number 14, got Oklahoma. Got a big game against Texas this week. And got to be honest, this is your week, Oklahoma. You got Texas in the Red River rivalry. Now, in recent memory, you have had Texas' number. Do you have it again? We'll see. At number 15, I got Utah. I still think they're a good football team. With Cam Rising, I think they are a top 10 football team. But we're going to have to wait and see how he's healing. I think it's still that wrist injury, I believe it was. But we'll wait and see. At 16, I got BYU. I'm hesitant to put them any higher than 16 right now just because I want to see them play more. I haven't seen enough to say that they should be any higher than 16. At 17, I got Kansas State just behind BYU because Kansas State's only lost to BYU. And Kansas State, I think, has been a pretty good football team, but still, again, just like BYU, a lot to be desired. 18, I got Indiana. Now, you remember I did Indiana, UCLA. Really, really impressed with Indiana. I think they are an interesting football team. First year of Kirk Cinetti, and they're a good football team. I'll say that. At number 19, you got Missouri. Again, still got a lot to work on after that loss to Texas A&M, but they're still a team I think is going to be good. Iowa State at 20, undefeated, and just we'll wait and see what they can do the rest of the season. I mean, they beat Iowa, but we'll see who else they can win. They can beat throughout the rest of the season. You got at 21, you got Pitt. I think it's Eli Holstein, who was one of the many backup quarterbacks at Alabama. He transferred to Pitt. Pitt is undefeated. So very interesting there. 22, you got SMU. They got an interesting core. I mean, 2 quarterbacks that legitimately could be starting quarterbacks, and they played rough against BYU, yes, when we had them, but they are an interesting football team. 23, you got Illinois. Only loss coming to Penn State, and Illinois is an interesting football team just because they got the win against Nebraska. It's going to be interesting to see how they do the rest of the season, but right now, I mean, I don't see anyone better than them that is behind them, per se. At 24, I got Nebraska. Of course, like I said, head-to-head, they lost to Illinois, and so Nebraska at 5-1. Very interesting football team. They got a very interesting ball game. I believe they got bye week, and then they come off the bye week, and they got Indiana. So, hey, that'll be a fun one. And then 25, I got Colorado. Now, yes, I see in the comments that yes, I am showing some Dion some love, and hey, I mean, they're 4-1. They're an interesting football team, and I mean, I didn't know who else to put up there. So, I mean, I was like, Colorado, I mean, they are an interesting football team this season. So, I'll do Colorado. I'll bite the bullet. And so that is my rankings for this week. Of course, we will be back Saturday morning for college football wraparound, preview the games coming up Saturday. Gonna be fun. And so with that, Thank y'all for watching, and we'll see you again later. Good night, everybody.